Welcome. Today we're traveling back to Colonial America, a time that shaped the nation's history in profound ways. But while the politics and revolutions of the era are often celebrated, daily life was far less glamorous, especially when it came to hygiene. In this episode, we'll uncover how early Americans kept themselves clean, or more often, didn't. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments about what aspects of early American life you'd like us to explore next. Hygiene in Colonial America. The colonial period was crucial in America's development, but it was certainly not a time of fresh air and cleanliness. Hygiene was influenced by practicality, religion, and social status. To many, a lack of personal care was viewed as impolite, and in religious circles, neglecting cleanliness was linked to sloth, one of the deadly sins. What counted as clean, then, would likely surprise us today. Full baths were rare, soap was harsh and expensive, and sanitation systems were primitive at best. The result was an environment where insects thrived, diseases spread easily, and daily life was often marked by discomfort. Encounters with insects. Early records reveal just how bothersome pests were. Captain John Smith, a central figure in Jamestown's history, often wrote about swarms of mosquitoes, ants, and flies. He even described a pest known by Spaniards as a cacarooch, a type of cockroach. Even prominent leaders like George Washington weren't spared. In 1748, while staying in a cabin in the Shenandoah Valley, Washington complained that lice and fleas infested his blankets. The experience was so unpleasant that he preferred sleeping outside, near campfires, rather than indoors. Missionaries also reported these struggles. George Henry Loskiel described biting insects that Native Americans referred to as living ashes, comparing their painful stings to burns from hot coals. Bathing and washing habits. For most colonists, the idea of a daily bath was unheard of. Infants were sometimes given baths, but not for cleanliness. Rather, people believed cold water would toughen children against disease. Adults typically did not bathe at all. Instead, a person might splash their face and hands each morning using a basin and cloth. Wealthier families who owned tubs usually used them for sponge baths, often without soap. For those without such luxuries, a dip in a stream on a hot day might be the closest thing to bathing they experienced. Sanitation and waste. Indoor plumbing was still centuries away. Colonists relied on outhouses or simple pits dug near their homes. Chamber pots were common inside houses, and their contents were often emptied directly out of windows. This careless disposal contaminated water sources, spreading diseases like dysentery, typhoid, and cholera. In cities and villages, garbage and animal waste often filled the streets. Poor sanitation was deadly. Historians estimate that at Valley Forge, in 1777, 2/3 of Washington's soldiers died not from combat, but from illnesses linked to poor hygiene. Ironically, disease also weakened British forces in the South, showing how unsanitary conditions could devastate armies on both sides of the Revolution. Religion and cleanliness. Understanding of disease was limited, and scientific explanations for cleanliness were inconsistent. Some doctors encouraged washing, but others believed that natural oils protected the body. In the absence of medical consensus, many turned to religion. The Puritans, in particular, emphasized cleanliness as a moral virtue. They saw washing as both a physical and spiritual act of purification. A clean home or body, they believed, reflected inner moral strength. However, they opposed public bathing, fearing it encouraged immorality and improper behavior.
Dental care. Tooth care was not a priority in colonial America. Toothaches were common, and people often turned to herbal remedies like chamomile or figs for relief. In more severe cases, alcohol or opium dulled the pain. Dentists were rare, so extractions were usually performed by barbers, blacksmiths, or apothecaries. Replacement teeth were made from wood, ivory, or even purchased from poor individuals willing to sell their own. George Washington famously wore dentures, not wooden ones, as legend suggests, but sets made from metal, animal teeth, and human teeth. They were uncomfortable and altered the shape of his face, but he endured them throughout his life. Wigs and lice. Among the wealthy, powdered wigs became a fashion essential. Made from human or animal hair, wigs offered both style and protection. Shaving one's head was a common way to combat lice, and wigs provided a fashionable cover. Still, wigs were not free from infestation. Proper wig care required weekly boiling and fragrance treatments with herbs like bay leaves or sassafras to repel insects. Ironically, the pomades used for styling often attracted more pests, making wig maintenance an endless struggle. Everyday hygiene tools. Archaeological discoveries provide fascinating glimpses into colonial hygiene. A dig at Jamestown unearthed a 17th-century silver ear picker, a small tool with a scoop on one end and a pick on the other. Such items were used for tooth cleaning, nail care, and even earwax removal. Earwax itself was sometimes used to strengthen sewing thread when beeswax was unavailable. Women's hygiene. Women in colonial America were not expected to shave body hair. Modest dress codes meant little skin was visible, and shaving was considered dangerous. Some women plucked facial hair or used early hair removal creams, though these could be hazardous. Recipes from the period even included ingredients like lime and arsenic. Hygiene and gender. Attitudes toward women's hygiene could be harsh. Thomas Jefferson once told his daughter that men were repelled by women who lacked cleanliness or delicacy. Doctors of the period often suggested that bathing was essential to women's health, particularly for reproductive reasons. Some even theorized that unpleasant body odors served as a natural defense mechanism against unwanted male attention. So, would you have managed life in colonial America, or would you have struggled with its smells, insects, and diseases? Hygiene was more than a matter of comfort, it shaped survival, health, and even the outcome of wars. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know in the comments what other chapters of America's past you'd like us to explore next.